All right, good afternoon, everyone. It's Jennifer DeBrule here in Richmond with our crew here at DRPT. We've got Emily Del Ross, Mike Mucha, Stephen Hennessy, and Neil Sherman here from DRPT, and we're very fortunate to have Angela Conroy with us from DEQ. So the purpose of today's webinar is to go through the DEQ piece of the application for funding under the Volkswagen Mitigation Trust. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Angela, but encourage everybody, we're going to have Angela walk through her presentation materials, and then we'll open up mics and let folks ask questions either over the phone or via the chat pod in GoToWebinar. So with that, I will turn it over to Angela.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. Can everyone hear me? Oops, let's reply to that, right? All right, so let's go on to the next slide. Here's just a brief overview of what we're going to talk about, and then we can get into questions, and we can even walk through the application and the supplemental Excel spreadsheet if there is interest. But so essentially, we're just going to quickly go over eligibility and funding. We'll go through the application process, the evaluation and scoring, and then, as Jennifer mentioned, we will open up for Q&A. Okay. All right, we'll hold up until folks can see the screen. Okay, so again, since you guys can see the screen now, again, we're just going to go quickly over the agenda, eligibility and funding, the application process, evaluation and scoring, and then open up to questions. So we'll move forward. So eligibility, so quickly, again, as you know, there's $14 million available to pay the incremental cost between a new diesel and a new electric transit bus. That also takes into consideration the funding. So it's really the incremental funding between your state and local match and the cost of the new diesel versus a new electric bus. And those applicants that are eligible to apply are those that are eligible to apply for DRPT funds, and those who apply for a state of good repair grant for replacements are eligible to apply for Volkswagen funding. Again, those projects will be those state of good repair projects that are replacing diesels. The Volkswagen funding does not replace the 4% local match requirement for state of good repair projects. Eligible buses are those that are 2009 model year or older, class 7 and 8 diesel transit buses. Those buses that you are replacing must be scrapped. Those are a condition of the Volkswagen consent decree. The state does not have any discretion over the scrapping of those buses. That is just a requirement of the consent decree. Eligible expenditures are really going to be for those capital costs. It's going to be for the cost of the buses and for the chargers themselves. So funding cannot be used for administrative costs, for operations, or the specifications that go beyond those options that are necessary to put a bus into service. Funding cannot be used for electricity cost of service upgrades at your facility or for the installation of charging infrastructure. And there is a cap on funding, and that's set at $500,000. Next slide, please. So the application process. So applicants must submit a state of good repair application and a Volkswagen application. And you're going to submit those applications just like you've submitted your applications in the past through the DRP Online Grant Administration website. Same deadline as the State of Good Repair, that's February 1, 2019. Only those applications and those projects that are prioritized by DRPT to receive State of Good Repair funding are going to be considered for Volkswagen Trust funding. DRP will prioritize those bus replacement projects, and then DEQ will actually evaluate those projects based on the evaluation scoring criteria for Volkswagen funding. So as you probably know, if you've looked at the application, you know what the evaluation criteria are and the points that are available. So again, the first thing we're going to be looking at the NOx reduction and cost effectiveness. So essentially what that means is we're going to be looking at the cost per ton of NOx reductions in your project. That's why we included, and applicants must fill out that supplemental Excel spreadsheet, because DEQ will actually be quantifying the emissions reductions and will be using the money that you're requesting, the VW dollars, to quantify the cost effectiveness of your project. We're also going to be looking at leverage funds. So those are additional funds that you bring to the table other than your state funding or your local match. Project feasibility. We're going to be looking at whether the technical and the fiscal readiness to carry out a project. We're going to be looking at the proposed schedule and the other information that we're asking in the application in order to evaluate the project feasibility. And then we're also going to be looking at the future likelihood that you're going to continue, you have a plan in place that continues the transition of turning over your diesel buses to all electric. So we want to make sure that this isn't a one-time funding situation. We really want to see that there is a plan to continue the transition to all electric. We also would like a 2-year implementation timeline for projects. We will be favoring those projects. Project location. We'll be looking at projects that are located in an ozone non-attainment area or in an area where there were previous issues with meeting the national NAAQS standards in Virginia. We have the URL there so you can identify those particular areas. The only non-attainment area for the NAAQS is for ozone, and that is the Northern Virginia area right now, but we do have some maintenance areas. Those are typically Hampton Roads, Fredericksburg, and the Richmond area. And then last, we're going to be looking at the societal co-benefits. So essentially, we're going to be looking at where your project is and looking for an explanation of what are going to be the air quality benefits in the community where your buses are running. So those might be communities that are in close proximity to ports or to railroads or major transportation hubs and those types of things. Also, in the project feasibility, and you'll see in the application, we are looking for documentation that you have already had someone come in, or you've done it yourself, you've assessed your need for an electric cost of service upgrade, because these buses are going to require 3-phase power. So we want to look at projects that have taken that into consideration. You have a plan to do that. You have the funds to do that, or you're applying for funds to modify your facility to accommodate the increased demand in electricity for charging these buses. And we're going to look at that, it's all part of the planning. So we're going to look at your plan in place. That plan is also going to document your future plans for how you're going to continue to fund the transition of diesel to all electric buses. Okay. It's up to attendees on the webinar. We can just open it up to questions. We can walk through the application. I'm going to leave that up to the audience to determine. Yes, we received any questions?
All right, so what we can do is, if you have a question, we can open up everybody's mic. Yes. the way to unmute everybody. Everybody's mic. So ask that if you are not, if you could use the mute on your phone so that we can cut down the background noise. So we did want to provide an opportunity for everybody to call to ask questions if they have them about what's expected on the state of good repair application for if you are not asking a question, you may want to mute your phone. We've now turned off the good webinar mute, and we're getting a lot of background noise. All right, so DRPT folks, we'll open it up for questions now. If anybody's got questions that they want to ask, we have Angela here since it's the best time to ask.
Joe has a question.
No, he's not on.
Okay.
All right.
So this is Neil Sherman. If we just want to update you actually on the DRPT is working with the Department of General Services to put together a RFP for the buses that you would be able to purchase for electric buses. So it will be an RFP, and we will have multiple vendors on there, and we've actually in the process of notifying. We've talked to I think we talked to every manufacturer who makes electric bus, some that are such as Gillick and New Flyer, who make the other diesels, but also those who are electric only. And so what we will be doing is hopefully that this will be a bid that will go out as early as next week, and it'll probably take 30 to 45 days to complete. Two of the transit systems have offered to help me review, and then those buses will be on state contract. They will have all the FTA requirements that you need, and it will have others. It will be what our goal will be is that DGS will have the bid when completed that you can pull down the whole bid, and it'll have the FTA requirements and pricing and everything there for you in contacts.
So I'll add to what Neil just shared. We had hoped to have this procurement out sooner. We had run into some issues with FTA and FAST Act compliance on cooperative procurement, and we have found out over the past, I would say, 60 days that pretty much any cooperative procurement that the state puts out on behalf of transit agencies here in Virginia now has to be open to any transit agency in the country. So I would encourage you to get in line quickly, because I do not know how many other open procurements there are for electric transit vehicles in the country. So considering that we've got, got the funding set aside, I would encourage you to, once we get through the draft 6-year improvement program and we have an idea of what is likely to be funded through the program, I would encourage you to go ahead and work with your selected vendors early to make sure that you get a spot in line as early as you can, so that those vehicles can be timely. And if we need to provide letters of no prejudice to be able to do that, we can certainly look at potentially doing that. But I am concerned that this open procurement, cooperative procurement thing is going to become a bit of a challenge. But we still think it's worth going through the process and getting the procurement tool in place to benefit Virginia agents. All right, sounds like everybody knows everything that they need to know about applying for the VW Mitigation Trust. So we will we'll close it down. I will end by saying that DRPT staff, and I don't want to speak for Angela, but I assume that Angela would as well, we are available to provide any technical assistance or support that you need in applying for funding. We know this year is pretty different and challenging for all of us, and so we want to make sure you have the resources that you need. Work through your DRPT program manager, and we'll get you whatever resources. All right, so we did have one question that came in via the chat pod, and the question was, is the grant for revenue vehicles only? And so I believe, we're looking at each other. I believe our intent from DRPT's perspective is this would be for transit buses and not for support vehicles.
That's right.
Yes.
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
And our procurement that's going out is for 40-foot buses, not for support. So good question.
Yeah, and as Jennifer noted, I will also be available. My contact information is in the application for questions on the VW side of the application process. And then if obviously there are questions that DRPT and DEQ need to discuss, we'll certainly get together and discuss those as well.
All right, so now we're getting questions then on the chat pod. All right. Are you required to provide an estimate on the charging structures?
So we would strongly suggest that yes, that you have done an evaluation in terms of the bus that you're applying for and the use of that bus, because the size of that charger will be determined by how that bus is used in service.
Folks on the flight deck, apologize for the bumpy ride. We're trying to coordinate.
If you're going to use a bus 24/7, then it's going to be a different size of charger than a bus that you're using only a couple times a day. So yes, you need to have an idea of the right size of charger you need for the use of that bus and the cost of that charging infrastructure.
Neil, are the charging stations also part of the procurement with DGS? Because I think that's something.
What it'll probably be is those. The way DGS does their procurements now is that they include options, and again, so they would request those options to be included with the pricing. We can request certain types of options to be done, especially those that are associated with the charging and electric equipment and such as that. Others obviously are just non-electric products, but we can certainly do that.
And there are some aftermarket chargers, but I think
yes.
To the extent that you want to purchase that as a package from the manufacturer, we want to make sure that we put the tools in place for you to be able to do that. All right. And then we've got Clinton asking, can the buses be 35 feet or 40 feet or only 40 feet? I think
Well,
what's our...
as a 12-year buses, if it's a 12-year bus, I must...
So we can do 35, 40, and then we've got Diana asking if we're going to include 60-foot articulated as well. So we can include those.
Yes, if it's being made, yes.
Yeah, we can include those on the option sheet as well. Yeah. That's really good feedback. More questions?
So I will say too that we specified depot charging. We're not looking to get into on-route charging, and so just know that every bus needs its own charger, right? So when that bus is not used, it has to be plugged into a charger. So it's a one charger per bus.
All right. So Josh Baker in Alexandria is asking about the eligibility for chargers, and that it was stated that chargers are only eligible for funding but not the labor to install them. Can you clarify?
That's correct. So that is a condition of the consent decree, so we can pay for the capital cost of the charger, but in this particular context, money cannot be spent on installation cost.
But that's where Transit Capital can help you, Josh. We can, I would certainly include that cost in as part of your overall cost for the transit vehicle in your application. And like we've been telling folks when they're applying for Transit Capital, make sure when you're applying for that, for a bus, that you're applying for a bus with everything that you need to put that bus into revenue service. So that would include the labor associated with installation. We may end up having to ask you for a cost breakdown so that we can exclude that labor cost from the calculations that DEQ is going to do, but it would be eligible for the 68% match under the Transit Capital Program. You're welcome, Josh. Mm-hmm. All right, you guys are asking great questions. Perfect timing because we're writing specs with DGS and trying to help y'all with applications.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, good. I wasn't sure. I had a question, and I hope it hasn't been answered. It's been a little interference and stuff, but when we're applying for the grant and there will be facility components because we didn't previously have electric buses, so you'll have to adapt your facility to be able to charge them, to install these charging units. Was any statement made of, do we put that all in one ask, or will we be asking for two separate line items in OGA?
If you are asking for facility modifications that are not related to the vehicle and the charger, then you need to put in a separate application just for the facility modifications, and it's only eligible for Transit Capital at a 68% match.
Okay. But if it's necessary for the chargers, then it still would get it because, we don't currently have the, I guess there was a drawing I've seen of where the charging stations will go, but they're going to take we don't actually know what adaptations it actually takes.
My understanding when I came down over a year ago and met with your facilities and operations folks, and we can talk more about this offline, was that no facility modifications were necessary other than putting the three-phase power in.
Yeah, I think
that's what we were told early on. So I think there's any type of facility modifications that are general facility modifications to accommodate transition to electric probably need to be on a separate application. We may end up combining them for the purpose of prioritization, but at this point I think it's better to have it separate since it's not eligible for MEW.
Okay, that works. And I'll get, you know a little bit about our situation. I'm the grants person, so I'm not as acclimated to the facilities without them on the line, but I was just curious. So, okay, if something comes up, we'll we'll follow up then.
The question from Raymond in Alexandria is about local match, and does the local match have to be readily available in hand, or can it be anticipated or projected in order to be considered? And we don't require documentation of the local match with the application. Just understand that your grant from us is, you know, a limited share, and you have to advance that project on schedule and have the local match in hand when it's necessary. So I certainly defer to local judgment on how you want to apply and confirm your match, but we don't go and check all of that on individual applications. I thought I heard somebody chiming in on the phone line. We have another question on the phone? Well, Happy New Year, everyone. And, you know, again, if there's anything that we can do to assist you with your applications, we are here and ready to do that as we approach that February 1st application deadline. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.